Hi, I'm Bill Carmody, and I'm the Marketing Whisperer. Today on my program, I have Drew Neisser, who is the author of the CMO Marketing Periodic Table. And I will tell you right now, before I even get into this and ask Drew about his opinions, this is one of the best marketing books you can read today. And I'll tell you why. At the end of the day, there's all kinds of people that are going to tell you that they know what they need to know about marketing. But what Drew was smart enough to do was to rope in 64 experts. These are chief marketing officers or chief marketing officer equivalents to help him tell that story by having the one thing that they think is like the best secret sauce of their industry, of their career, and then talk about it. And he put it all together in this chart of elements. So welcome, Drew. How are you?
Hey, Bill. I'm great. Thank you so much for that introduction, and flattered. And, the good news is the folks that have read the book have been really enjoying it. So many share your point of view, which is great.
Well, I mean, I think what's interesting is that, most of the time when you read a marketing book, the marketing book specifically talks about a aspect of marketing, right? It's talking about, oh, this is about direct mail, or this is about internet marketing specifically around search. This one crosses the gambit. It talks about internal corporate culture as much as strategy, as much as execution. And so what I love about it is that you really have the best minds in the marketing business, brought them all together and talked to them about sort of here, if you do one thing, this is the one thing you need to do. And there's 64 of them.
Yeah, well, and I could have added more, but I felt like 64 was enough to get started. But there are a couple things going on. This was a journey of about 5 years. And my agency, Renegade, focuses on helping chief marketing officers find innovative ways to cut through. So figure if I'm going to help CMOs, I better understand CMOs. So I just started interviewing them a little, and part of that is this notion of marketing as service, a little give to get. I write an article about them, they give me a little of their time, and maybe eventually we get some business. But mainly, I wanted to do a Vulcan mind meld with them. I wanted to sort of get into their heads, figure out what made them tick. After about 5 years and having done 150 interviews, somebody said, Drew, duh, there's a book in there. And what I realized was another theory book would be useless in the sense that I talked to so many different people and they had so many different perspectives. But what I noticed was the ones that were really good could take the right elements for the right situation and apply them. There was no cookie cutter approach for them. They sort of, I'm at Visa. I know if I'm Antonio Lucio, I know I'm going to apply certain things. But when I go over to HP, it's going to be a very different set of elements. And so the periodic table just sort of came to me in a sort of chemical explosion, if you will, and
absolutely
was a good organizing principle for these interviews.
Well, and I think it is a great organizing principle because essentially it's all the various elements of marketing that you need to be thinking about, right? So ultimately what you're seeing is here's the internal challenges, here's the external challenges, here's all the things that a marketer has to face in order to be successful. So how do you overcome them? How do you make sure that you've got the right team doing the right things? How do you make sure that you're addressing, both the loyalty aspects of repeat purchases from your existing customers as well as going after net new?
And I think I'm really pleased that you noticed the importance of the basic elements and the internal elements and why it was sort of structured that way. One of the things that I noticed, and I have a great deal of sympathy for CMOs, it's a hard job.
Yes.
It's really hard. And their life, 2 to 3 years life expectancy, but the ones that succeed know how to work internal and external. And if you don't get the internal right, you lose because there are way too many people that are going to take your budget.
So, tell me a little bit more about how you reached out to these individuals. Can we sort of, as you got them to sort of talk to you and have these conversations, I really do think it is a brilliant strategy to sort of say, hey, I've identified 64 of the top marketing professionals out there. These are the ones that tend to be changing the game. I really want to get inside their head and figure out what is the thing that they think is most critically important. And by having that diversity, you have such a great wealth of insight. So tell me about how did you approach them? How did you get them to come in and talk to you and share their insights with you?
Well, that for a long time, I was able to get to them because I was writing for fastcompany.com. And so they said, hey, I'm writing for, I blog for fastcompany.com. can I interview you? And most of these folks appreciate the importance of building their personal brands. So there was a lot in it for them. And I made sure of that. I also, whenever I write about doing an interview, there's a blog post and then there's an article somewhere else. And now I have a column on Ad Age called CMO Spotlight. Most CMOs want to be featured in the CMO Spotlight. So it's very easy now. Initially it was hard, but once I had done 10, it was easy to say, well, I write for a bunch of publications. Can we talk? What's interesting about talking to marketers, if you are a marketer yourself, you can have a good conversation, and it's a benefit to them. In some ways, it's therapeutic for them. So I made a lot of friends in this process as we talked about their challenges and thought it through. And I mean, importantly, you've never seen me write a negative story. Sure. I'm not a journalist. I might be a detective in the sense that I'm really trying to get in there and figure out how they did what they did. So I sort of start with success and try to break it down from where they were. But I'm not there to write, a story that's going to be critical. I'm there to find the positive things that other marketers can learn from. So if you do that enough and they redo any homework, they'll see, Drew is he's a decent writer and he tells a good story. So that helps as well.
So I'm gonna ask you a very difficult question. So you've got 64 elements,
Yes.
and I know they're all critically important because these are these top CMOs that are telling you what they've done and how they've done it and successful. But if you're talking and sort of saying to an entrepreneur who's sort of getting into marketing,
right.
I'm thinking about our Inc. audience here now.
Sure.
Tell me sort of where would you recommend that they start? Of all the 64 elements, which are the elements that you think are most important that they focus in on right out of the gate?
Well, first, I look at entrepreneurs as just a CMO without a budget.
Sure.
So I have, and as an entrepreneur myself, I have a great deal of sympathy for them. The book is written as a progression for a reason. You have to get these basic elements of strategy and planning and research in place, regardless of whether you have a $10 budget or $100 million budget. So you have to start with very clear objectives and so forth. I think the real difference that an entrepreneur faces is they have to focus, and they have to focus with incredible, whether it's focusing on target, ideally, it's a place to go. And then after focus on target is focus on story. I mean, what exactly is it that you want people to tell about you, and what is it that you want to tell about yourself? If you can find those two things, a really clear target and a really clear story, and there's probably 3 or 4 chapters in the book that touch on those things, I think an entrepreneur has a fighting chance. The entrepreneurs that, to me, the biggest mistake, and the question that I'm asked the most is, well, if you could pick one channel, which one would you use? It's never about the channel. Mm-hmm. It's always about the strategy and the story, because the story could work on any channel.
So let's talk about your story. You started Renegade. You've been doing a lot of great things in your agency industry. Tell me a little bit about sort of how you got started and some of the things that you might have applied directly. So when you're writing this book, you're thinking about, hey, you know what? I've been there. I know exactly what this person's talking about. Right.
So, well, thank you for asking about that. So Renegade initially was part of a big Japanese agency called Dentsu. We started way back in the early 90s, and they said, we want to get some Panasonic business. Can you go do that? And I said, sure, and the but was the world didn't need another advertising agency. Could we do something else? This is pre-internet even, and the Panasonic at that time had gray advertising. I said, can we be the anti-gray? Can we do everything that they don't do? Can we be nimble? Can we have a rapid prototype strategy approach? Can we execute in guerrilla? Those kinds of things. Dentsu said, we don't care, just go get business. So we did. We got some Panasonic business. We incorporated in 1996. In 1998, I bought 20% of the company back. We grew, but always with Panasonic as our largest client. We built their first website, their first blog, their first guerrilla marketing program. All of those things we did with them, and then we expanded to other clients. Well, in 2008, fast forward, we'd already been working with Panasonic for 14, 15 years. It was clear that we were going to be separating. So I said to Dentsu, there's no basis of relationship. So in 2008, October 31st, 2008, I bought the company.
It's great.
Right in front of the worst, recession since, the Great Depression, right as 70% of our business is walking out the door. So essentially, Renegade this is at least 2.0, if not 3.0. We went from a lot of people to a very small group of people and rebuilt the company. And there are a couple of lessons in there. As I advise entrepreneurs, focus. The thing that saved us was in 2009, I said, all right, we're going to jettison all these departments but one. And we're just going to do social, which was early at the time, so we were ahead of the curve, and that saved the company. Mm-hmm. So now social saved the company. Then we get to 2014, and we've been doing nothing but social. And two clients of ours simultaneously launched television campaigns that bombed on social. And at which point, there was my sign. Okay.
It's time to do something else.
Exactly. And so we expanded our services, and we do what we call social inspired marketing, where social is core for insight, and we know how social fits across multiple channels. And part of this exploration with all these other marketers was also to help me find a new framework and a new strategy that would allow us to do this social inspired marketing in a way that was fresh. That's a long answer.
No, that's great. That's great. I mean, I started TradePoint in 2008 too, so I actually can empathize with sort of the downturn as everything was going a little bit crazy here. So I'm really happy that you were able to sort of find your way and sort of come out, because I'll tell you, the businesses that sort of survive winter, tend to be set up really, really well for the growth in the spring, right? And so what I hear you saying is that you went through that winter period, you sort of figured yourself out, and you just continued to sort of drive your business forward. And I think I applaud you for that. That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah, it's a lonely life as an entrepreneur. And then you asked about, looking ahead a little bit and how we applied our own philosophy. Well, the way I see the world right now is we live in a give to get economy. You got to give people something in order to get their time and attention. You look at so many business models, right? Google gives a search and exchange. That's the give. The get is our eyeballs, right? And you think about so many businesses you give their eyeballs and you get attention. You get something for free, and that therefore they can monetize you with your attention. So the give to get in my business is what we call marketing as service. And that to me, and there's a chapter on that, American Express is the best representative of this idea that if you do stuff, not say stuff, but if you do stuff for your customers or prospects, they will relate to you more, they will do more business with you, they will be more loyal and more likely to advocate on your behalf. So if you look at Open Forum or Small Business Saturday or a zillion other things that American Express has done for 30 years to build strong bonds with small businesses, you would find marketing as service is just a cornerstone of their approach to marketing.
So I'm a huge believer in give it up for free, right? I'm a huge believer that, if you want to sort of grow your client base, you have to find out what is the value that you can create. And ultimately, if you're an entrepreneur and you're looking at ways in which you can sort of attract more clients, it's what are the things you can give up of value, that really are truly valuable to your audience that you can give away for free. And when you figure those parts out, you're going to attract a very large audience back to you. So I think that's a great way to sort of help build your business. And it's a very strategic way of making that happen.
And so one of the things that I would call marketing as service is this book, right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's the culmination of a lot of individual marketing as service activities, right? Every time I write an article on a CMO, in theory, if nothing else, I've done the Vulcan mind meld, but I may have endeared myself and my agency to them, right? Because we've given to get.
Right.
And so even the ones that we don't do business with are friends and part of a network, and and I know the power of a network and what that could mean to understanding. So I'm a big fan of marketing as service and a big fan of content marketing that isn't self-promoting. I mean, if you look at the articles and I probably write 50 plus a year, I almost more than 90% of the time forget to mention Renegade. I mean, I go way to the extreme of this. I don't recommend that for other businesses. I think, 80% of the time you don't, but 20% of the time you should be able to toot your own horn. I go to the far end to the point when I write about these people, they don't even know I'm an agency guy. It's like, okay, that's too far.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think it's interesting about it is from a content marketing strategy perspective, you're adding tremendous value. And I think the thing is if it felt like a sales pitch to Renegade every time you read an article, people would stop reading them.
Exactly.
So I think, there's a balance for sure. But I think what's interesting is by going out there and adding value first, you're sort of building a credibility bank. And so people want to read your articles because they know it's not self-serving, but you're actually there for the greater good. And I'll tell you, I think that's my objective too. Whenever we're doing any of that type of content on Inc., it's like, what is the value to the audience that we serve? And how do we make sure that the content is extremely valuable to them, right?
Exactly. And if you do that, you build trust. That's what brand building is about, right? Is building trust.
That's great. Well, listen, is there anything else you want to cover off? We've had a lot of topics today.
Right.
Anything else we haven't talked about in your book? I highly recommend it. I mean, honestly, the CEO's Periodic Table, it is absolutely one of the best books out there on marketing today. And I will tell you that, if you haven't read it, if nothing else, it's a great resource guide. You don't even have to read all 64, of the chapters. You can get to say, hey, look, I'm struggling with this, and then go right to it. And it's a couple pages long. It's an easy read to be able to sort of get a better sense of how this particular expert used this tactic, Well,
and I appreciate that. And one person described it as snackable insights. And I often say the best thing about my book is the longest chapter is only 6 pages.
Exactly. Right.
But there are these little nuggets.
Right? If you can't read 6 pages, you have a bigger problem.
Yeah. Well, and that's sort of, exactly. Made for the folks with a short attention span like myself. I would say this, there are some chapters in there and people in there that I really, really, truly admire, as opposed to everyone I respect, but a few that I really admire, like the Daniel Lebetsky chapter. He's the founder of Kind. And this is a guy who lives the brand. And I really encourage entrepreneurs to live their brand. And you will see him on the subway in New York City, when he sees someone do a random act of kindness, like let an elderly person sit in a subway seat, he will hand that person 2 Kind bars and say, look, I saw what you did. It's a wonderful thing. Here's 1 Kind bar for you. Here's another one for you to pay it forward. I love that story. And he lives the brand, and that's so important. So purpose branding and living it. And then the second one is John Yembrick of NASA, who is the head of social, and how he got into that. But what I took away, I saw him speak at a conference, and he was so passionate about science, NASA, and social media that I had to talk to him. I mean, I ran to the stage, and it was like the last interview for
this has to happen. Let's talk. Come on.
Well, because I didn't have a chapter on passion, and it's just amazing to me. There's only maybe 2 brands or 3 brands in America that have a 99 cloud score other than Obama. And one of them is NASA, and he's the guy. And you say, how did that happen? Well, it was 100% his passion and dedication that oozes through every single post that they do. So, if I had to say 2 things, purpose and passion are certainly, no entrepreneur can go wrong with those two components, or those 2 elements in their arsenal.
I want to thank you very much, Drew. Drew Neisser, author of CMO's Periodic Table. Excellent book. Definitely recommend it. If you have any questions or interest in marketing, it's a fantastic book to pick up and read. Drew, thank you very much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. Great talking to you, Bill.
Take care.